What is going on YouTube? Today we are going back in time to get the Platinum Trophy for a PlayStation must-play series called Uncharted. We are starting at the very beginning and have decided to make a 3-part series where we go through the entirety of the Nathan Drake collection. I have played these games across the PS3 and PS4, but today on the PS5 we are going for the Platinum Trophy. Uncharted Drake's Fortune is obviously where we will be starting off, and what a nostalgia rush it was. This one definitely stands out due to being the foundation of the series. The weird thing about the base games is the fact that there are no story trophies really throughout playing. Instead you just get the 4 difficulty based trophies when you beat the game. So that leaves a lot of other trophies, and they are all technically miscellaneous combat trophies, collectible based ones, or for speedrunning chapters. The first game has 45 trophies to achieve the Platinum, and I will be starting with 13 trophies from a playthrough in 2016. PSN Profiles gives the game a 5 out of 10 difficulty, which I think is about right, as we have to beat the game on crushing difficulty, resulting to some infuriating moments. Luckily, we can always chapter select to clean up anything that we miss. It only requires 1 playthrough if you do crushing right off the bat, and it will take an average of 15 hours to achieve the Platinum Trophy. Over the playthrough, we died nearly 200 times and was very close to smashing a controller, not gonna lie. Before we jump into the start of Drake's journey, be sure to subscribe to ours. We are aiming to achieve 100 Platinum Trophies as soon as possible, with only worthwhile games, and all support from subscribing or liking the videos is greatly appreciated. There are some Platinum gems and some new games that I'm going to be working on outside of this 3-part series, so stay tuned. With that being said, let's get right to the beginning of Nathan Drake's adventures. The game starts off with us doing a bit of deep sea grave robbing, and we're with this random journalist called Elena recording all of our crimes in 4K. Essentially, Nathan is embarking on a big treasure hunt so that we don't have to go back to our questionable side hustle. We recover this journal that belonged to our ancestor Francis Drake, and we then are attacked by some random pirates and are thrown into some combat. Luckily, Nate is ready and has absolutely no problem killing people, which again is being recorded by Elena. The ship does eventually get shot up to the point it starts sinking, and we have to jump. Fortunately, we are saved by Nate's partner / dad, Sully, who does a drive-by in a plane and picks us up before we become shark's dinner. We then land to give the journal a read for some valuable knowledge on Nate's ancestor Francis Drake and his lost treasure. However, we then read that it is a boys-only trip, so we look at the journalist who paid for the entire recovery of the journal and decide to ditch her and embark on some potential homosexual activities. From here, we go treasure hunting in this random forest with Sully and grab some collectibles while looking for an old, ruined entrance. In true Nathan Drake fashion, we break into this ancient structure. While inside, we encounter our first puzzle, which did not take too long to solve. However, we also get our first death due to our own stupidity. You stupid. After we climb down without breaking our ankles, we then head deeper into the ruins and renovate the place, taking us back outside to this abandoned boat casually sat on this waterfall. It doesn't even make sense how it got there. So naturally, we climb the cliffs around it, nearly die again for being impatient, and proceed to explore the inside of the boat where we find a skeleton conveniently holding a map. On our way out, we accidentally knock over one of the explosive torpedoes left on the ship and rightfully run away scared. However, once we get back to Sully, we are then introduced to our baddies of the game. Roman and Navarro are another older-younger duo who are looking for the same treasure that we are. Roman then proceeds to endgame Daddy Sully right in front of us, and before anything else happens, the torpedo that we kicked blows up, giving us time to escape. At this point, the game essentially takes the stabilizers off the bike and we start to experience the true crushing difficulty. Shortly after our escape, we then bump into a familiar face. That's right, Elena somehow knew where we went and followed us here to give us a fisting. What? Which is entirely fair enough, but she is not aware that we have a small army now after us, and she's unknowingly put herself right in the middle.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Fortunately, Elena bought weapons, so we now have to backtrack through the level, but it is now covered in enemies. Safe to say, this took a few attempts while I got used to the combat. Thanks to some previous stats from 2016 and many resets, we very quickly achieve a trophy for getting 250 headshots. However, it was on the exit of these ruins that I was really worried about whether I could mentally do this for 15 hours. We literally could not get outside and we were instantly killed over and over again, but eventually we managed to escape. Using Sully's plane, we then follow the map that we recovered with Elena for some reason. Our peaceful journey does not last long though, as we are shot out of the sky by an anti-aircraft cannon before we can get too close, so we both jump out the plane and skydive down below. Nate passes out and wakes up to a stone statue of Lord Farquaad and naturally shits his pants. We then start exploring the forest where we rack up a few deaths. Not to combat at first, that's right, this log right here. With my extremely low brain cell count, we managed to get a couple of deaths. I am not proud of this at all. Then, to make it even worse, we get thrown right into a few back-to-back combat sections where again, we get rolled many times. During one of the fights though, we are able to get a trophy for collecting 20 hidden treasures. That dopamine is shortly lived as we then get swarmed with more enemies and go back to being on the pirate's casting couch. Something worth mentioning, we are currently at 42 recorded deaths, but thanks to all these resets, we are able to get another trophy for killing a certain amount of enemies while hanging. Eventually though, we were able to clear this small section of ruins and get a small break to breathe. Just kidding, in this game you're basically always shooting unless you're in a cutscene. We then have to cross over this waterfall section, and apart from this death for being stupid, this spawn right here was just outright awful. For 10 minutes straight, I honestly struggled to kill these two enemies, but we persevere and push through the forest to find our crashed plane. Of course, there are a swarm of enemies ready to end game me many times. Fortunately, thanks to restarting a few times, I farmed up a total of 30 kills with grenades, netting us this trophy. After killing the first wave, we then go and explore the plane and collect the map that was conveniently left on the dashboard. On our way out, we quickly break our ankles falling out of the plane. So far, I'm not sure if I'm contributing more to the death counter than the enemies. Now, we are given about 5 seconds to prepare for a second wave of enemies which presented a challenge. However, we were able to earn another trophy for getting a triple kill with a grenade. Many resets later, we managed to clear the enemies and are able to proceed ahead where we watched a pirate get old school impaled by a trap. While trying to get this treasure, we not only fail miserably and fall off the cliff, but we then get capped immediately on our next respawn. After clearing the forest area, we then make it to the fortress where we have to break in and eliminate everyone. You are talking like 100 odd people in a back-to-back series of combat sequences. As you can expect, this part was pure pain. Again, resetting enough times, I was able to get a trophy for 50 shotgun kills. Each section of this chapter had its own set of challenges due to cover, or should we say lack thereof. However, I was able to find out that you can use the third-person camera to peek and shoot corners without popping out and exposing yourself. This peeking method helped a ton when clearing rooms and checking corners without being one shot for it. After finally clearing the first section, we are able to have a minute to grab some collectibles. There is a special collectible called a relic, and we found the one in this game for a trophy. Using the strap that I just mentioned, we clear the next area quite easily, and then we somehow managed to find Elena's parachute tied up in this tower. So we follow the trail and eventually manage to spot her in the distance, but it is interrupted by the pirates who are not happy we massacred a lot of their friends. Now we are forced underground where we manage to completely whiff an entire mag, but in this room is our 30th collectible and our next trophy. Unfortunately, we are about to enter an extremely painful series of back-to-back fights and rack up a fair amount of deaths. In this underground water room, I found you had to essentially learn where the enemies would be dropping in from and camp these spots. If they split up and manage to get around you, you are basically screwed as you have no cover. Then, as soon as we try to get outside, we are greeted with not only a few enemies, but we are then checkpointed behind this thin door. You literally could not even peek or run outside. This area alone reset me around 20 times before I even made it up the stairs, where yet again I got endgamed. Thanks to a bit of grenade spam, we managed to get a short break. During this break, we done some renovations and got squashed for it. Now that we know it's a quick time event, we renovate without being squashed and proceed to climb the fortress. This break is short-lived as we then stumble into yet another open area with a lot of enemies. Somehow though, I managed to get through here first try, and this was one of the fights that I was actually worried about. We spent a lot of time hanging back and abusing the third-person mechanic to shoot without peeking. Then we pick up this noob tube and absolutely nail this turret gunner so we can safely head upstairs. Now we are upstairs, we start clearing the corridors surprisingly easy, and then eventually make it to this balcony. While here, we can get a better look at where we need to go and check if Elena's got any cake. Before we come to our decision, the Perv Patrol hit us with an RPG and we get bonked on the head with some debris knocking us out. While sleeping, we were taken and thrown into a prison cell. I swear, I've seen a movie like this once. While in the prison cell, we get to meet the pirates leader called Eddie, who asks us about the map and why we were killing all of his men. This conversation gets cut short by Elena surprisingly, who uses a jeep to knock down the wall. We then swipe the map back and quickly Tokyo drift out of there. On this chase sequence, we are gunning down Eddie's men with this grenade launcher, conveniently on the back of the jeep, but we do also get sent back to the lobby multiple times. Elena nearly yeets us off this broken bridge, giving us no choice but to reverse the car off the bridge into the water. After we make it to shore, Nathan and Elena have a little disagreement on whether to continue the search. We of course do continue, thanks to Elena's convincing, and we then proceed to commit more war crimes on camera for the chat.
W's in the shot.
With that discussion over, we then enter one of the worst sections in any Uncharted game. It does not matter the difficulty, and that is the jet ski sections. Essentially, in this area, you are on a very hard to control jet ski, being shot at by people on the balconies while having no cover, and you also have to dodge RPG shots and explosive barrels randomly floating in the water. Now, you may be asking, how did we do this? The answer is very slowly. Occasionally, we had to get off and clear the way for the jet ski, and these sections were also awful. I spent so long here that I was able to get a trophy for getting 50 kills with a gun named after your wiener.
Are you crying, bro? No, bro, I'm good, bro.
Many deaths later, we manage to open the gate and Elena comes and picks us up to resume the pain. With a bit of perseverance, we make it to the next part where we are away from the jet ski, where we are then spawn camped a couple of times before we're allowed to progress into yet another combat section. Fortunately, we managed to clear the way after only a couple of deaths, and then head to the top of this tower to progress into the next area. While making our way through the building, we proceed to get wrecked a couple of times. At this point, we decide to split up so that we can go and get a boat. Literally, as soon as we leave, things proceed to fall apart and we then make it into this infamous room where we were ambushed. Luckily, I was able to get this room cleared on my second attempt by sitting behind these stairs like a rat and camping the angles that you can shoot from. There was a few close calls when hunting down the last two people, but eventually we clear the room and make it to the boat. Sadly, some goons have made it here first, and as we're about to start blasting, Elena rocks up and forces us to watch some sus videos on her camera that she just recorded. After skipping the weird bits, we then get to some footage where Elena managed to find out that Daddy Sully actually survived being shot and is being held hostage. So our next mission is to rescue Sully and hopefully beat everyone to the treasure with our big brain knowledge. In the next encounter, we managed to net ourselves another trophy for 20 kills with this one-shot revolver. Shortly after that, we have to cross this dodgy bridge and it does go about as well as expected. Elena nearly dies and she loses the camera which has all of our war crimes and sex tapes on. What a shame.
Hold up.
An even bigger shame is that we are then forced back onto the jet ski for a final time, and this section was just pure pain. After some perseverance and some resets, we finally make it to the next chapter. Right at the beginning, we hop off this bridge for our 40th collectible and our next trophy. Nathan and Elena then explore the forest and stumble across these ruins where we get into yet another big combat section. While here, we get endgamed a lot. Like, a lot. Then, right as we thought we cleared the first area, this dude just rocks up and resets me as I was about to go outside and get the next checkpoint. In the next go, we do make it outside, but immediately get domed, but at least we got the checkpoint. There was a sniper lying around here, and thanks to the many resets, I was able to get a trophy for killing 30 people with it. Nathan and Elena then head into this building where we are reunited with Sully. It turns out the journal that he kept a hold of actually took most of the bullet. With the gang back together, we then used the journal to discover a hidden room inside the library. I am ashamed to say that this puzzle actually took a few minutes to figure out, and I felt so dumb once I realised what I had to do. Eventually though, we complete the puzzle and locate the secret entrance which we go and explore. At the end of the tunnel ends up being a church filled with goons, so we are then forced into becoming target practice again for a few minutes. One positive, however, is that we got another trophy for killing 20 people with the Desert Eagle. Once we suffered enough times, we were able to clear the room and eventually head underground again into this crypt. It did not take long before we were jumped again, and even when I was expecting it, they still got me. In the end, we made our way out of the crypt to find our 50th treasure for this trophy. It was now time for some hardcore parkour to get back to the gang, and after we drop into this room we are then caught lacking and somehow pop off before they kill me. Drake then makes his way back to the church to solve this parkour puzzle, which we complete pretty easily. Apart from that, the puzzle then takes us to a window where we can see the building that we need to get to, and it is swarming with guards. So naturally, we gun our way through them all and make our way to the building with the markings noted in our journal. While in here, we find yet another secret entrance, and while we are climbing through, it closes back up and Sully gets separated. Unfortunately for Elena, she is now locked in here with me. We then basically have to make our way through this death trap maze, which not only resets us enough times on this playthrough, but we then have to speedrun this for a trophy later on as well. Roughly halfway through, Eddie and his gang of pirates somehow turn up and just start blasting. I have to say now, this spawn point right here and the next checkpoint were probably the worst ones out of the whole game for being spawn camped. There was literally no time to react to the guys above and rushing you all within a second of spawning. Honestly, this was the closest I had been to a full rage quit this whole playthrough. It was just awful. Then the one time we actually make it to the next checkpoint, which is just as bad, right as we're about to do the interaction to trigger it, we then get backshotted with a shotgun and die. Turns out he's hiding under the stairs here. How cheap is that? Once we make it to the top of the stairs, we then had to deal with this for around 15 minutes. The pain finally ended and we made it out of the section into this room where we find Francis Drake's skeleton and our next clue. Sadly, Eddie rocks up shortly after and we end up in a standoff. What we don't know about this treasure is that it essentially possesses people and turns them into crazy creature-like things. And Francis Drake set all of these traps and puzzles purely to hide it. For a while, Nathan and Eddie team up as a horde of the creatures then ambush us in this tomb. While here, we get a trophy for killing 20 people while running and shooting from the hip. Then, Eddie proceeds to get eaten and we have to run for our lives down this cave where we find an old war bunker that we can hide in. Now that we have a few minutes, we take time to look over the maps and notes while planning a way out of the bunker, which involves us splitting up again. Drake naturally decides to parkour round to the other side. We explore these dark tunnels to turn on the power, and it turns out that these mutants are of course in here with us. After slowly clearing out tunnels and mindlessly walking past the generator switch in this room for 10 minutes, eventually we turn the power back on, and on our way out come across some documentation of what the treasure does to people. When we get back to the room, we find that Elena has been captured by the bad guys and we are then flanked while having a bit of a breakdown. In this combat sequence, we have to take on both humans and the mutant things on our escape from the bunker, and of course, this came with a couple of resets. But eventually, we make our way round to this emergency exit and climb above ground to meet up with Sully and save Elena. Unfortunately, when we get to Sully, he has been ambushed by a lot of mercenaries and we of course have to help him out. While doing so, we got absolutely riddled with bullets. I died so often here, even when playing like a child and running to the back of the map to hide and peek. The game picked up on this behaviour and then decided to checkpoint me right in the open part of the map for the primary wave of enemies. From here, we got railed more than some people's stepsisters.
Oh, okay, goddamn.
And I was very close to breaking my controller. Literally 23 resets later, we managed to clear the area and are rewarded with yet another big combat section in the back of the church. In this fight, we sent Drake to Jesus so often that he probably is banned from heaven and any church. At this point, I was essentially just walking through the rest of the game constantly aiming, as the few times I was not, I got shot and immediately died. A true false sense of security. 30 minutes later though, we clear the church and are able to move this stone table to uncover another secret entrance. While exploring in here, we find our 59th and 60th collectible, netting us this trophy. From this point, it is essentially just combat and cutscenes, as the focus is to just complete the game. Turns out, this tunnel that we found was the secret entrance, but sadly the bad guys have already made it here through brute force and explosives. It is here that we get to witness the curse take over Roman once he opened up the gold coffin. Navarro knew what would happen and then proceeds to one-tap him in the head. Turns out, Navarro was playing Roman all along, and he now has the coffin and confirmation of what it does, and proceeds to escape with Elena. This sequence wasn't all that bad, apart from 2 deaths to my incompetence and a surprise shotgun blast. On the next attempt, we decide to jump aboard the coffin that's being airlifted out and hold on for dear life while it crash lands on this ship. With a short time to recover, we are then thrown into the final gunfight of the game. This area here was probably where I died most. I was stuck for around 45 minutes, just constantly being riddled with bullets. The final firefight is 3 painful back-to-back gunfights with very limited ammo and cover in all 3 of them. Also, if you die, you get sent right back to the beginning. Watching this footage back, I am surprised I did not rage quit, to be honest, or take a break. Instead, we kept letting Nathan Drake get raw dogged until we made it to Navarro. This fight was kind of disappointing, honestly. We then basically end up fisting each other, and we endgame Navarro by kicking him in the nuts and tying them to the coffin, which drags him into the ocean. Might be one of the worst ways to go, honestly. He is hitting the water and he already can't breathe due to our testicular abuse.
I am under the water. Please help me. Here too much raining.
We then finally get a double trophy pop for finishing the game on hard and crushing difficulty. This would have been 4 trophies for all difficulties if I did not already have easy and normal. With Elena saved and the coffin fed to the fish, we are then picked up by the legendary Sully, who not only has a boat but has also stole a load of treasure. So we hop aboard and sail off together into the sunset, where the credits start to roll. With the main game complete, we now have a couple of trophies left to clean up through chapter select. So we start off by going and collecting the final treasure that we were missing to give us the Master Thief Collection trophy. Luckily, once you beat the game, you are given the option to spawn in certain weapons and enable things like unlimited ammo, which obviously helps with the cleanup. Using this, we go for a couple of trophies at this specific location where we were first ambushed by the mutants. First, we go for 30 kills with the grenade launcher for this trophy. Then we go for the survivor trophy, which is for killing 75 people consecutively without dying. Next, we load up a different chapter, and using the collection of enemies, we can restart checkpoint and farm 10 grenade kills for this trophy. Later on in that same level, we go for a couple more trophies. First, we constantly restart this checkpoint here to farm stealth kills, and eventually we get the Master Ninja trophy. Right after this checkpoint is another spot where we can farm multi-kills with explosives. Once we get 5 multi-kills, we get the Dynamite Master trophy. Next, we head back to the tutorial chapter to farm brutal finisher combos. When we kill 20 people in total with these, we net ourselves the Brutal Slugger trophy. We also kill 5 people in a row with these finishers to get another trophy. Next up was a trophy called Steel Fist, which was for killing a certain amount of people by shooting them once and finishing them with your hands. We also done this 10 times in a row for the Steel Fist Expert trophy. Now all that's left are the speedrun trophies. They did take a couple of attempts each, and the one with the maze was the worst, as when you are rushing, you just make more mistakes. Eventually though, we start off by completing the maze in the time needed for the Speedy Reunion trophy. Next up was to speedrun the Fortress level. This one was simple enough, and on our first attempt we get the trophy for completing that speedrun. The final speedrun that we have to do is the jet ski segment. This one did take a couple of goes, but fortunately it is quite short, so it did not take long for me to beat the time and get this trophy. The final trophy was a very easy one, and that was just to enter photo mode, so we go ahead and do that for this trophy. Then after that, we pop our first of 3 platinum trophies. Overall, I found that Drake's Fortune was an amazing game that still holds up today, even when trying to go for the 100%. It was the stepping stones for the whole series, and although it was a lot more action driven, it was still an incredible game that I would fully recommend, especially for the short completion time. If you like this video, then be sure to leave a like and comment on what games you want to see. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to follow our journey to 100 platinum trophies or see the other Uncharted videos when they drop.
我很喜欢冰淇淋。